Well, it's good to see you today. Good to be here with you. Married off my son last weekend. It was a good weekend, you know? But it's great to be here with you today. We're going to continue the According to Jim series, lessons we can learn from the New Testament book of James today. Danielle did a marvelous job last week, leading us to learn more about wisdom and the importance of making good choices. Today we're going to be looking at something that I believe affects all of us at some point in time. To begin with, I want you to look at a couple things. First of all, I want you to look at a video I took of my tree in my backyard. Isn't that restful? Okay, so you can hear the wind blowing, you can see the tree bending. Okay, now I want you to look at another picture here. You know what that is? That's my pergola, laying upside down following a windstorm. A couple of Sundays ago, in fact, I was eating lunch down in our basement after returning from speaking here. Darla said, "Hey, can you come up and help me?" We were outside getting things ready for the storm that was coming in. We got plants taken off the side. I took the umbrella out of the table out on our back patio, and when we came in, we got out of the wind. Got in, closed the door just in time to see the pergola begin to lift up in the air, and I said, "There she goes." Sure enough, there she went. It rolled over very gently to lay it where it was right there. Now, two different things I see here. One, there's a tree that bends and blows in the wind but never gets uprooted. And then there's a pergola that did not have a foundation that allowed it to stand up against the wind coming against it. Now, here's a verse that's going to lead us to our thought today. Found in James 1, verse 12. Here's what it says. "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." Now, here's something I recognize. Challenging circumstances are something that all of us will face. They come all of our ways. But perseverance, it's a choice. So what do we need to put in place in our lives so that we can stand firm under a challenge and not be blown away or upended? The title of the message today, Building Character. And according to Jim, we're going to see what it takes to have character that will stand the tests coming against us. Hey, we've all had things that come into our lives that leave a certain heavy residue behind, haven't we? And whether we refer to them as trials or troubles or challenges, they have the ability to test our foundation. Now, here are a couple of observations I had as I watched my tree bend in the wind. One, roots make a big difference. My pergola had no weight in the legs and I'm trying to solve that problem, by the way. The root system of the tree, though, kept it anchored. I also recognize that flexibility allows for movement. The storm that blew over the pergola took down a lot of trees in our area. Branches snapped, limbs broken, even trees were snapped in half. But this tree was able to weather the storm because it was flexible, it could bend. And you got to keep the fluid flowing. Now, this is another reason for the flexibility. There's plenty of life in that little tree in my backyard. No disease, no rot has made the branches or trunk weak in certain places. So it could blow and bend. And the last thing I recognize is that when we face trials, we can't afford to tense up. Now, I know trees don't have feelings. Well, anyway. But I know trees don't have, with these other factors in mind, though, flexibility and so forth, the tree was not rigid. And since it wasn't rigid, it could survive the storm where others couldn't. So what does this have to do with persevering through challenging times and the character that is built from getting through them? Well, I think the tree is what we want for our lives, not the pergola, right? So let's go back to the verse for today. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has prepared for those, or promised to those who love him. Now, this same type of idea, I began to notice a pattern as I was looking through these different passages in James that deal with this same subject, that there's a pattern that emerges. It's kind of interesting. We're going to spend the rest of our time on that pattern. But we're all going to encounter troubles in life. Listen to what Jesus said right before he was crucified. He said, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. But look, in this world you will have" what? Trouble. So Jesus promised that. Take heart, though. He said, "I've overcome the world." Now, just because a person chooses to follow Jesus doesn't mean everything's going to be roses. Doesn't mean everything magically goes right all the time. We're all going to encounter these challenging times in life. However, when we recognize and embrace the pattern that we're going to look at today, I think we put ourselves into a place in our lives where character can be built and we'll encounter the blessing of God. And I'll tell you what, I need and want God to bless me. I am blessed, but I want more. So what is this pattern that emerged? Well, the first thing I see is that the pattern it involves testing. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test. Now, for the follower of Jesus, the reality of trials and the idea of testing, they go together. When we encounter trials, challenging times in life, they test our faith. In the past month, I've walked with several people whose faith is currently being tested by trial. One of my best friends in this world started cancer treatments 2 weeks ago. When he first heard the news, it shook him and his family to the core. The prognosis is very challenging. One of our church planners, in Algonquin, had his church burned down 3 weeks ago. He and his wife escaped the flames. They got out with just the clothes they were wearing. That was it. My mom and dad had the house they'd been living in for 15 years in Southern California. They're in their 80s, sold out from underneath of them. They had 4 weeks to find a new place to live. I met with a pastor who'd been fired from his church for no apparent reason other than personality conflict. And then I had the opportunity to go with my daughter-in-law when their family dog was put down. Now, all this and more happened in a matter of 4 weeks. You feel me? Because I'll tell you what, I know there are some out here who have a list twice that long. And maybe even a list that's gone on for years. And I recognize that. So whether it be challenges at work, loss of employment, relational upheavals, health issues, money problems, hey, we've all got them. They're real. They're real. The first key of getting through the test is to realize that we are supposed to stand the test. Blessed man who perseveres on trial, because when he has stood the test. I love that phrase there. We ought to recognize it's a test coming our way. I had a professor in college who liked to refer to tests as opportunities. He was a rather twisted individual, okay? But his thought was the tests he gave to the class were opportunities to share what we had learned and what we had retained. You know, trials test what we're made of. Now, I thought this would be a good time to use some fire. Because if you can use fire in a message, how much better does that get, huh? All right. So, I'm going to test a couple of items here. So, first of all, okay, both these items, okay? They look very similar, don't they? Both metal, okay? Let's look and see. Let's test this one first. Okay? All right. Well, it's standing up so good so far. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't think, no. Let's test this one. I know sooner or later heat transfer is going to take over here, and I'm going to drop this, okay, because I can feel it starting to get a little warm. So tell me, what's the difference these two things? Well, this is solder. This is steel. See, what we're told in the Bible over and over again is that trials test us. They test what we're made of. So we shouldn't be afraid of trials because they're showing what we are on the inside. It shows our character. So I did a little research on what it takes to forge a katana blade, a samurai sword. The metal is heated in a forge, and when it becomes soft enough, it's folded over, and then it's hammered like crazy. And they do that 8 to 16 times to get the sword metal forged and to work the flaws out. In fact, when I was told my buddy who has cancer about this, he said, and in the process of folding and hammering all the flaws are made smaller and smaller until they disappear. See, testing, it removes flaws and it forces us to look up for help from the Father. See, the reason I like the idea of testing here, and that's really what the word means, trial. The idea of testing is that we have a test coming our way that we have the answers for. There's the beauty of this, guys. We have the answers for every test we face. Now, when they come upon us, if they catch us by surprise, sometimes we just got to pull the answers out from here, or from here, or from here. Okay, sometimes they just don't come right away. But we got to realize tests, when we're tested with a test we have the answers for. We don't need to be afraid of this stuff. We don't need to fear the fire, because it's a test we can pass. Because notice what it says. When he has stood the test. You see that there? When talks about fact. It's going to happen. And even though we're being hammered, it's going to happen. So here's the second part of this, though. Because when we have a test, we also face temptation. When we're being hammered on, the temptation is to give up. I remember a time my dad invited me to run a 5K race with him. I was 26, he was 50. The college where he was a professor was doing a race for freshman orientation. I was in town, and he said, "Son, why don't you run with me?" My thought was, how hard can it be? No, I wasn't training for it. I don't really care to run except when I'm running around the bases playing softball, but I agreed, and I started real well, okay? Then the first hill came, and I was huffing and puffing by the top of the hill. I couldn't really catch my breath, and the problem was there was a second hill coming, okay? And I got toward the bottom of the second hill, and I looked over at my dad, and I said, "Guess you're going to have to do the rest of the race on your own." He said, "What? You're not going to make it?" I said, "Nope, I'm done." And I watched as my dad pumped his arms and legs like a machine and finished first in his age class of the race. I'll tell you what, that was beyond me at that point in time. Here's something I recognize. Conclusion here. We got to train for trials. They're going to come. We got to be ready. We all face tests, but remember, the tests are not stronger than we are. We have the answers in hand to pass them. But there comes a point in every trial where we want to tap out. Or we want to say, "I'm just done with this." But this is where perseverance comes in to make a difference. We started this whole thing with thought. Challenges come to all of us, but perseverance is a choice, and it's true. It's true. It's a mindset. It's an outlook. It's a choice we make to keep going even when we feel like we're done. It comes from deep in here, and it comes from up here. Ross Perot said this: most people give up just when they're about to achieve success. They quit on the 1-yard line. They give up in the last minute of the game, 3 feet from the winning touchdown. See, people with perseverance are able to push through challenging times to get to their goal. Thomas Edison. Okay. Now, he did not invent this item here, but he did figure out a filament that would work and last for more than an hour or two, okay? And when he did this, he showed perseverance. He tested over 6,000 different possibilities of filaments before finding one that would last. And I love the attitude he took throughout the entire process, because when another filament failed during this testing time, he said, "Well, we now know another thing that won't work." Okay, now that's attitude, right? That's a perseverant attitude. Hey, when I heard the cancer diagnosis from my friend, I asked him where he was. He responded, "I'm home." And I told him, "I'll be there in half an hour." We talked, we prayed, we cried a little bit, we did some laughing. And I reminded him that he is a fighter, because he is a fighter. And he told me, "I'm going to fight this thing with everything I've got." And I told him I'd be right there beside him to lift his arms up, because that's what you do, right? He's very early in the process. He knows there are going to be challenging days ahead. But he's made up his mind he's going to battle this thing. See, the temptation to tap out is very real during times of challenge, but we don't need to give in to it. Instead, we need to incorporate the mindset that says, this is a testing time. I'm being heated, I'm being hammered, but I'm not given up. I read this quote somewhere. It takes an ungodly amount of heat to turn iron into steel. We're designed to be steel, not solder. But I recognize the key reality here, guys. We need people around us to help us when our sight starts to slip during trials, and it does. I know that. We need people who will remind us to look up, to hold on, to not tap out. And you can find that here, okay? You can find it even stronger in a small group. That's where my buddy, we've been a part of small groups for 6 years. But I want you to remember, when we face tests, we have the answer sheet, but we don't need to do it alone. We just need to grit our teeth and hold on. And that's the third thing I see. In each one of these passages about trials in James is that there is a time of triumph. I was watching the Women's World Cup with Darla, and I noticed something. Winning looks a whole lot different than losing. You know that? I have a couple of pictures here of our team. They're celebrating the victory after winning the cup. Now, I also looked for some pictures of teams that had lost the games. But you know what? I couldn't find any. Because nobody takes pictures of that. But we've seen it, haven't we? We've seen what people look like when they lose. Heads are down, bodies are lying on the ground, tears are being shed. Even some looks of envy are being cast toward the winning team. Oh, I wish we could be there, right? Here's the deal. I love the promises that James gives us regarding the practice of perseverance. He said there are promises in each of the three specific passages. First of all, we're promised here the crown of life. This is something that was presented to the winners of a race. They could wear it, and they showed that they were the victors. The idea of God giving this to those who finish. And then completeness. Puzzles need all of their pieces to be complete. So, a couple weeks ago, my grandson was over, and we found this after he was gone. One puzzle piece. Now, you say, what does one puzzle piece out of 24? Well, who misses it? Well, the whole puzzle does, right? And here's what we're told. That when we survive trials, we get through them, we get more complete. More pieces are put in place. Perseverance helps us mature in Jesus. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. And last but not least, we get to experience God. In James chapter 5, he details the perseverance that Job utilized as his life was turned upside down by the challenges he faced. He lost everything he had during the time of testing. But God was faithful and gave him back twice what he lost. And I love the final descriptor of the Father in this one. The Father is full of mercy and compassion. That's our Father. And we get to experience him when we get through trials. I'll tell you what, I love to win. I'm a firstborn. Okay, so I love to win. Except when I'm playing my grandson, I let him win, okay? Because he's a firstborn too, okay? So anyway, what I see in this book of James, and so many other Bible passages say the same thing. When we choose to follow Jesus, we move from the losing team with our heads down on the field to the part of the winning team, being able to celebrate what we've done, not because of anything we've done, but because of what Jesus has done. And our job, we hold on. We practice perseverance when we encounter challenging circumstances, and we lean into him for the strength that he will give us. And I know because I've felt it, and I know it, and I'm nobody special. If we follow Jesus, we're all a beloved child of the Father. When it comes to holding on, I really like the lyrics of the Little River Band song. Remember this one? Hang on, help is on its way. I'll be there as fast as I can. Remember that one? Now you're all going to Google that when you get home, I know. Okay? Now I used this passage a couple weeks ago. All right? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Key word there, through. Hey, we're all going to encounter valleys in life. Valleys are not to be intended to be our resting place. our destination. Valleys are intended for us to get through. And so when we face the time of trial, we need to choose to practice perseverance to help us get through the valley. I've had to do it. You have too. And you know these principles work. So recognize the testing. Choose not to tap out. And look for the finish line. It's there. It's there. Here's a couple ideas I want to give you for this week, the week ahead. First of all, stay close to the Father. When we face these times, it's real easy to think that God doesn't care or that he's dropped the ball somehow. He wasn't watching. These are the times I know, though, I just need to continue doing the things that keep me close. I've been reading through the book of Proverbs this month. I hope you've joined me on that. I read chapter 28 this morning before I came here. You can listen to the Bible app if you don't prefer reading. But I'll tell you what, I like to listen to what God has to say. I like to talk to God about what I'm going through because I know he listens to me. And I even like to write down the things I'm hearing, the things I'm feeling, because it helps me. Maybe it'll help you. But stay close. If you're not in the midst of a challenging time, we've either come through one or one lies ahead. Now, this is not pessimistic thinking. It's realistic thinking. Because times of testing come to all of us, and they make us stronger. So the next test that comes up, remember, you've got the answer in your hand somewhere. So look for the answer. Ask God what he wants you to learn from whatever you're enduring. And sometimes the answer will be very clear. Sometimes it'll be real cloudy. But that's okay. Trust him. He's full of mercy and compassion. And last but not least, if you're going through trials, you don't need to do it alone. No. The first direction I go when I encounter difficulty is up. You know, I talk to God. That's what I've learned through the years. But then I take it to others. Other people I count on, people I know who will pray for me, people who encourage me or walk with me. We don't need to go through difficulty alone. So reach out. Don't hold back. Ask for help. No reason to be proud. No reason to hold stuff and carry stuff you don't have to carry. That's why we have this community called the church. And guys, if you know someone struggling, why don't you reach out to them? And it feels good to help out. It feels good to be a source of encouragement and strength. You might be the one who helps them hold on this time. Helps them get through. Perseverance. The ability to hold on, keep moving. It's a choice that points toward the future. So hold on. Brighter days come. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for the fact that we can count on you. You are our God, and you hold us. When we are at our wits' end, you hold us and wrap your arms around us. Thank you for the comfort you give. And Father, I thank you for the hope we have because we are your children and you love us.